So my name is Padilla. I run Spacecoast Works. I was the main mechanic here since we started. I now currently run the front of it. And I still do some mechanic work, but I have a mechanic here, Zach, who has been working out great for me. We are connected to Spacecoast Harley Davidson in Palm Bay, Florida. And we are a dealership-backed speed shop. So it's kind of cool because we get all the dealership perks, but I don't have to really fall under dealership rule. I can kind of do my own thing most of the time. So when it comes to, engine building, aftermarket parts, I don't have the huge push to always push Harley stuff. So we get to work with a lot of great aftermarket companies and use a lot of their parts. Yeah. So I have always been into Harley Davidson motorcycles specifically. Like, motorcycles are cool. I've always liked motorcycles. I've worked on a lot of motorcycles, a lot of different types of motorcycles, but Harleys have always kind of been my passion. But I did not grow up in like a Harley household. My grandfather ran an auto shop, and so I was around mechanic stuff a lot. I was around, car stuff. Cars are cool. I like cars, but motorcycles kind of always had the most special place in my heart for me. As soon as I turned 18, man, I bought a 1969 XLCH chopper thing. I didn't really know what I had, but I was like, I knew that's what I wanted, something in this realm. I didn't even really know what choppers were either. I mean, I got into motorcycles because of choppers, but I thought choppers were just like long, real big back tires, like the early 2000s Discovery. I was a kid when that was going on, so I watched that like constantly, just lusted over that. And that was kind of like my first really seeing this stuff. But then I started seeing like the smaller bikes, actual more like period correct kind of chopper stuff. And that's when I was like, those are the bikes I like, but I just knew Sportsters. I was like, yeah, I like Sportsters, so I bought this Ironhead when I was like 18, 19, somewhere. I think I was 18 when I bought this thing, and it was a 69 Ironhead, So it was a kick-only magneto start, had like a bolt-on rigid tail section thing. And that was kind of where I started really, becoming like working on Harleys, And I've always, like, if I've ever had anything, I took it apart. Like, I've always just like wanted to know how everything works, always. And so that's kind of ingrained in me. But I've, been around mechanics most of my life. I started working on Harleys, but I was like 2008 or so, and then I was like, I'm gonna be a mechanic, So I went to Wyotech. Graduated from Wyotech, started working on Harley Davidsons for like a profession in 2009, and then the rest is history. I've been doing that for a long time. I like doing mechanic work. I think that's probably what I'm best at in everything. Just regular mechanic work. That's kind of where I think I shine. I have a certain style of bike I put together, there's a certain stylistic side that goes with all of this, especially even in the performance scene, there's, the bikes are made to rip, and like, that's definitely what I like is, riding aggressively, pushing it to the limits, but there is a certain look that goes along with it, and that's the look that I like, The same thing with chopper stuff, like, I was really into, Steg, Psycho stuff growing up, Indian Larry did a lot for me, that kind of stuff. So even with all the early 2000s biker build-off stuff, that was always that New York tough guy bike. That's what I've always been into, and those are performance bikes in their own rights. You know what I mean? They always have been. So, yeah, big motor shit's cool, man. Like big motor, big brakes, killer suspension. Like, give it whatever it's on, it's always cool. I've been working on bikes for a few years, right? Maybe not even that long. I hadn't been working on bikes real long, seriously, like I'd worked on stuff, but I mean like, when I was kind of really early in my mechanic career, I guess you'd say. And that's when I met my stepfather, which is kind of funny to say. So I started working for the guy who eventually became my stepfather, right? So this Howard, love Howard to death, he's my stepdad now. So I started working for Howard. Howard was a big influence to push me into the performance stuff, right? So I always liked fast stuff, I always liked, that kind of stuff, but I was really into like just stripped down chopper stuff. And so he had a shop I was up in North Carolina, you know, kind of starting all this. I met him. I went to his shop to buy some parts from him because I had a little stripped down Sportster chopper-ish thing that I wrecked, and I just messing about. I broke the. It was like a rigid mount. It was a '94 rigid mount Sportster, and I broke the mid control plate off of it. And he had one. You know, I was working at this little rinky-dink shop, and he came in looking for some parts. I was talking to him. He saw my bike out there. I was like, hey, well, I need some parts for it. He's like, yeah, I got that. I got that at the house. So I went to his shop. Saw a shop behind his house. And I was like, this is sick. I was like, yo, can I work for you? That's basically kind of how that happened. And then he met my mom, and then they got married. So at least he didn't just bang my mom. He married my mom. So, but yeah, I love Howard to death. And that was a cool time. That was a cool time with it all. But he was the first big push into really changing my mind about, you know, hot rod Harley shit in all reality, right? His shop was really engine focused, engine oriented. And I got into that early, right? So I got into that real early in my career is just building. My first actual job was complete rebuild on a 86 1100 Sportster, case split. It was in a box, and this guy's like, yeah, you want to work here? I worked for this dude named Peanut at Discount Motorcycle in Dunn, North Carolina. And he said, yeah, you want to work here? You got to put that together, you know? So I put his Sportster together for him. He's like, all right, you can work here. And so, like, you know, I always kind of knew how to do it, but like, but again, like I said, I worked for Peanut for a little while, so I met Howard when I went to work for Howard. He's the one that really pushed me into like the little tips and trades, you know, little secrets of how to really make a Harley make real power. You know what I mean? Howard's also the main reason I'm into FXRs. You know, I like FXRs. You know? FXRs are my thing. I've had a bunch of them. I currently own 3 of them right now, and you know, he was the one that kind of. You know, there's a certain club that's known for FXRs, and that's kind of all over North Carolina. And that was another thing that he would talk about that. You know, we did a lot of work on that kind of stuff. And then he would talk about that, talk about how FXRs, what, you know, just really explain to me the FXR. So, yeah, basically my stepdad was the biggest influence on me being really into performance stuff and FXRs, both of those two. My bagger is a 2019 FLHP. It was a Police Road King. For some reason, I've always had an affinity for police bikes. Just like, you know, like there's a lot of dudes, especially older dudes, like I feel like police bikes are always like just a certain cool thing about them, right? Maybe it's the red buttons on the controls or whatever. You know, that's why I bought that bike, because of the fucking red buttons on the controls, you know? You don't realize there's a ton of one-off parts there are only police bike parts on these bikes, you know? The tachometer in the dash is only police. The Speedo 4 Road Kings is only police and has all the police lights on it. The rear fender is only police. The mounts on it are only police rear fenders. And so there's a ton of stuff that goes on police bikes that is police bike only. The ECM's police only, the BCM's police only. They have all their own settings on them. But I initially just wanted to do a Road King that was like, you know, kind of like a fairing on it. I mean, probably more likely I was going to do a Road Warrior fairing, or I was thinking about doing like a little super chop short windshield with the black bottom in it, kind of like it's on the Modern Heritages, but cut it real short, but make it a performance bike, T-bars, you know, pick it up, do all the, you know, the Hot Boy performance stuff to it, man. But we host one of those, like, you know, like little cop roundups where they come out there and they go through the cones and stuff like that. We host one of those out in our parking lot every year. You know, so it's a real big one. And I saw they had the Harley Proto one out here before it was out, like people knew about it. They had one out, they had that guy out here riding it. And I was like, yo, that is fucking sick, dude. Like, it's a road glide, like a police road glide. And what I thought was the coolest part is it had a glove box, you know, like has that glove box like on like the electrolyte standards or whatever. That had one of those in it, you know. I'm just looking it over and I'm just like, I'm not doing a police Road King anymore. I'm gonna do a police road glide, right? So I called my bike the Pig Slayer, just kind of a little kitschy thing on it. Motor-wise, let's start with motor, right? Motor-wise, it's a stock 114 top end, HO, so it's got a little more compression on the cop bikes. Stock throttle body, or 55 millimeter throttle body, 55 millimeter manifold, 5.5 injectors, SNS 475 cam. I have the SNS intake and that SNS exhaust on it. And it does all right. It's a fun bike to ride. It's ThunderMax, got a ThunderMax tuner on it, you know, which I will attest to. The superior product is definitely ThunderMax, 100%. Once I kind of always knew how to use them, but once I really figured out how to use them, and I went to class up there, hung out with Millhouse and Jake. Yeah, they're superior. They just absolutely rule. I'm a big fan of those. Yeah, but the motor's nothing crazy in it. It's fun. It makes cool sound. It's fun to ride on. Stock transmission. I got a Screaming Eagle clutch in it. I put a lot of power on bikes and put Screaming Eagle clutches in them, and they're fine.
Hey guys, want to take a second and talk about Speed Dealer Performance. You guys will remember Frank from an interview we did a few months back on his incredible FXR. Today, specifically, I want to talk about their line of swing arms for FXR, Bagger, and Dyna. These things are incredibly well engineered and put together. Recently just had one installed in my Bagger. Huge improvement, not only in looks, but also in performance with added rigidity at the rear end and a lot of weight reduction. This swing arm is made from 6061 T6 aluminum. There's no weld, they're machining a solid piece. All the components are made of stainless steel, so you're reducing weight over the stock swing arm by 17 pounds, so a huge weight reduction. The axle is 4130 chrome moly tubing. You get oversized bearings up front, axle adjusters and safety wire. You also have race jacks, which is a super nice feature. You have 3 shock positions, and you can run up to 14-inch shocks on the position that's furthest forward. You get a billet caliper mount, so it's machined, not welded. 25mm axle hole, 108mm bolt spread for your caliper. As you can see, these swing arms are a huge improvement, not only in looks, but also in performance. I'll include all the Speed Dealer's information in the description below. If you got questions or anything like that, make sure you reach out to them, tell them I sent you. Let's get back to it.
We definitely focus. So at Speedworks, the main thing here is we are a speed shop, right? We are a full-blown speed shop, and I can build you a gnarly motor if you really want it. But what I like to focus on is what I'll call like reliable horsepower. So I really like to stay underneath 150 horsepower, 150 foot-pounds of torque. That way, it's really not just destroying shit. But cams top end where we kind of have a formula that I do on most motors that always works. There's pretty much 2 camshafts we use. Top ends are always S&S, and it's just like a 5.5 injector, 55mm throttle body. A lot of times, or 55mm manifold, I'll use a stock throttle body. Stock throttle bodies make a ton of torque. The stock heads on these things are bitching, dude. Like they are 350 CFM that I've seen on a flow bench. They're badass. To put that in perspective, your top tier twin cam B2 heads flow 360. So the M8, not only the heads, but the cam design, the cam angle, the big cam design, cam change in those is really like, they can support a lot of power that, I came out of the twin cam world. When I started working on twin cams, I built a lot of twin cams. I built a lot of high horsepower twin cams. But like the amount of money that you would have to put into a bike to get a twin cam to like 125, 130 horsepower, 145 foot-pounds of torque was astronomical. And then there's no longevity. And now I'm there like cam, tune, manifold injectors. I'm 120 horsepower, 130 foot-pounds of torque and on low lift cams, So yeah, S&S 475 rules, kind of rules the world. I'm a big fan of that cam. And the Star Racing 3030. They're kind of the two. Generally what I'll do with the customers, I'll talk to them, I'll sit them down, I'll figure out where they ride at, how they like to ride. And it's gonna be that 3030 or the 475. I have no problems with either of those things. I make great power with them. So the work that went into putting the Road Glide fairing on was pretty straight up. So I've been in so many of these bikes, right? I've been in so many of these Rushmore bikes. They've been the same for a while now. I was working at dealerships when those things came out. And basically, if you work at dealerships, you're a tech at a dealership, you pretty much only work on baggers, right? And so I know that inside of that fairing really well. So I knew what to order, what to make, or what to get, how to mount it, and the mounting's fairly stock. The only thing that was anything per se custom at all was I kind of had that glove box doesn't fit in that Road Glide fairing mount, so you kind of got to cut it out. You kind of got to make it work, But other than that, it was pretty straightforward. It's nothing too crazy. There's not much in there. I don't have speakers in there. I don't have a radio. I just have the glove box in it. I have the speaker pods because those are part of your mounting system for the fairing. But it's pretty light. It's pretty awesome. I was telling you, I recently wrecked this thing too, and the fact that there wasn't too much in there, like it kind of like wasn't so detrimental because I I've spun out and I hit a bunch of gravels. I was boogieing pretty good, laid into a corner with a bunch of gravel into it. It turned me pretty much 180 and high-sided me. And the fairing mount, the one that mounts to the frame, took most of the impact. I actually still have the mount that I made to mount the glove box still in it. That's just the same one that I made is still in it. So, yeah, that wasn't a huge struggle though, to be honest with you. There wasn't anything huge struggle. A bigger deal was, on my front end, I'm running the Alloy R lowers with the radial mounts on them. And those radial mounts are made for big brakes. And I specifically wanted the Lindell Enforcers. I'm homies with the Lindell dudes. Paul, Chico, Charlie, I love you guys. I love the shit out of you guys. And, they've been super good to me. I was on a race team with them, so we, last Motor America King of the Bagger season, we were racing. It was Jiffy Tune, Lindell Brakes, and Spacecoast Speedworks. And so we got real close with those dudes. I mean, you're traveling the country, racing tracks, sleeping in tight quarters. You get real close with these guys, right? And so, I definitely 100% wanted to specifically run those 11.8 Enforcer rotors on the wheel. I have Enforcer wheels on the bike, right? And me and you were talking about this earlier. Not a super big fan of how those things look stock. Not really. But if you do like a full powder coat on them, I think they look bitchin'. And I kind of wanted to run the Enforcers because it is a cop bike Enforcer. I thought it was cute. There's a lot of little kitschy things on it. You know what I mean? And so I wanted to run the Enforcers because they're super open. They're like a split 5-spoke, super open. The same thing with that Enforcer rotor, that solid rotor they got on those things. Super open, so I want to leave that super open look. But those 11.8 rotors, they wouldn't accept the mounts for the 108 millimeter radial mounts on those Alloy Art legs are for big brakes. So I had to machine down the actual mount that mounts the caliper to it, and machine that down, cut that down, and make sure to make that fit. But yeah, I mean, but as far as this bike goes, a lot of it went together fairly easily. I used a lot of stock stuff on it. I just wanted to I got there's like this full built bike, but I got stock floorboard, like the cheapest stock floorboards on it, because I wanted to keep with the whole cop theme of it for sure. So I got the it's also an 11.5 inch Lindell rotor on the back. That one I think is the Prodigy Carrier rotor on that one. But the brakes are they're the Brembo cast monoblock, the black ones. I think they're phenomenal brakes, and I'm learning Lindell pads in this thing. That's another thing I think really with a lot of this stuff, especially when it comes to the brake stuff of it, and specifically maybe for the company Lindell, if you're gonna get their rotors, get their brake pads. That company started out making brake pads. Their brake pads are killer. Their brake pads are absolutely great. So when it comes to match your rotor and your pads together. It's not just putting a rotor on your bike and leaving stock pads. And you hear all kinds of stuff and people put stuff on it and they're expecting these crazy things to happen by slapping a rotor on and then slapping your old pads on it. All this stuff, for one, needs to break in together. It's just like building an engine where you got to go through a break-in period on your cylinders, your piston rings. The same thing on your brakes. They have a break-in period, so you need to break your brakes in correctly. And but if you're doing new rotors, do new pads, but make sure the pads are for the rotors. So I hear a lot of stuff about that, well, I put these on and these didn't work or whatever. But it's you kind of halfway did it if you didn't do it all the way, right? So. But yeah, so they're the radial mount cast monoblocks. I got the Lindell rotors on it. And that mount is that new PM mount I thought was cool. A lot of it's real open, leaving it real open. Again, I like FXRs, I like choppers, I like the more open bikes. Baggers, that is kind of the thing, man. There's a lot of dudes in this, especially in building bagger stuff. It is a lot of dudes don't really get recognition for stuff that they really do because so much stuff gets covered up on these things, There's a lot of covers. They're big. I mean, they're fucking trucks. Dude, they're heavy. They're heavy. They're big, heavy bikes. They have a lot of stuff on them. A lot of stuff gets covered up. And so, for me personally, and I think a lot of dudes as well, when it is when you can, specifically my bike is super understated on purpose. It's not made specifically for laymen. It's more you'd have to realize what this was before. Otherwise, you just think it's a lifted road glide, right? But you're there's a lot of little trick things on it, and I do that with all bikes, and it never gets looked at. No one ever looks at it, but there are the few guys that do, and I think that matters the most. But there's a lot of guys out there doing small stuff that maybe seem they don't get recognized, but I see it, guys. I see you guys. I see what you guys are doing out there. There's a lot of really killer dudes putting bikes together, killer guys putting bikes together. But anyways, back to the bike. Yeah, so the Alloy Art lowers. That's one of the Speed Kings. Fork brace for it, and that's a Sly Fox front fender on it. Pro 1 black tubes. think the whole front, my top tree, I actually have a stock bottom tree on the thing with a cover over it, and then the top tree is one of those new Kins factory billet little top trees. Boosted Brad risers, the best looking in my opinion, the best looking risers in the game. Like they are, they're $3 steak. You know what I mean? They're tough. They're killer. Thrashing bars on it. I put stock hand controls, so it's like a regular Harley Brembo master cylinder for your brake and for your clutch. But again, this is working in the dealership, and you get takeoff stuff sometimes. I had the luxury of like. I'm a big fan of mixing chrome and black together, right? Chrome and black together it always works, it always looks good. And so I found a set of takeoff chrome master cylinders, and then I put black accents on them. So, and then I got the PSR those little short PSR levers on them, and I pulled the levers off, so I polished the levers out, and so most of the fairing stuff is all Harley stuff. I made that little bracket for the mechanical oil gauge that's on it, or oil pressure gauge that's on it, and then I got a voltmeter running in there too. The glove box, I think the glove box is cool. I think it's super cool. I'm running those headlights. They're like the K&S headlights, and I was showing you I could like flip them on and turn them red and blue. I special ordered those from K&S. Thrashing grips, a lot of stock stuff though, man. I wanted to keep it, looking. I definitely wanted to keep it looking a certain way. Because I wanted it to be like basically, if there was a police road glide and somebody got their hands on a police road glide and then made a performance bagger out of specifically a police road glide. And so I kind of wanted to keep all the police stuff to it. So like I was saying, like the one-off parts, like that the gauge mount that's on these things currently doesn't really come on any other production bike. And it's that same gauge mount that's been around forever, single gauge mount that mounts to the top of your riser, But that doesn't come on any other production bike. I want to leave that on there. That Speedo that's in it is cop Speedo only. I want to leave that on there. I actually missed something super huge. So I have 49 millimeter Batubo drop-in cartridges that are standard bagger height. But we manufacture a 2-inch dampening rod and set preload spacers for those, then give you a 2-inch lift on. Batubo now has a 2-inch lift kit on, but when we started this, there was no 2 inches on Batubo. So I manufacture that, and then suspension all the way back, I'm running the Screaming Eagle Oleans reservoir shocks, and we also manufacture a 1-inch lift kit for any Oleans with a rebound adjustment on it can accept our lift kit. And they basically look kind of stockish. We basically wanted them to look stock because your lift kits generally consist of you pull your Heim joint out, and then you bolt the lift in between, and you put it back on it. Ours are a full replacement of the whole kind of eyelet end. You replace the full eyelet end. It looks stock. It looks clean. I like those better than the bolt in between. So the Batubo stuff is we initially started using it because it was available. Because we started this in COVID times where you could not get parts. That's why we were manufacturing these lift kits and stuff. You couldn't get anything. I couldn't get my hands on nothing, and so, but I was able to get those Batubos. We had dealers through Brock's. I saw that they were on there. Like, all right, let's try these out. So we got these Batubos, we made the lift kits for them. And the price point is a little bit lower on Batubos, but they are a killer suspension in all reality. For a street bike, there's a lot of dudes racing these things. And for a street bike, I mean, it's more than I think you're gonna actually take it to the limit on any of these things. But Batubo's been super cool with us. Sean, I deal with Batubo all the time. He's a super, super cool guy. We became homies in that world. Homies being at the track, Sean's on the track, Batubo's at the track. And that's also a big deal too. Like if you're in this performance game and you're calling yourself a racing company and you're not racing, like, what are you racing? You know what I mean? Kind of thing. But, they're there. They got support. The support's been good. The biggest caveat is probably it take longer to get sometimes than I like because they are an Italian company. Everything comes from Italy. They are setting up a warehouse down here, actually fairly close to us, but it's not all together yet. But as far as for the money wise, I don't see a better investment for the money. Whether it be, like you're seeing a lot of the Knicks kits in the Oleans world, or a lot of dudes running Legends stuff, and then the GP stuff is. The GP stuff is killer. If it's me, depending on where you want your money and what you're trying to do with it, it's gonna be Batubo or GP. I find those two to be mainly my favorite, right? And so, but for street bike, the Tubos kick ass. They look cool. You know, they feel really good. Sealed cartridge. I guess the only thing I could really say is I don't know any of the bikes with like, I don't know if it's put like 50, 60,000 miles on them. So I don't know what the longevity on that is, but that's a lot on anything. You don't have to rebuild anything. But yeah, super easy install. They're sealed cartridge. You don't gotta pump a cartridge. You just kind of put them in, figure out your air gap, and rock and roll with it. You know, they're killer. They're killer. Attention to detail is, in my eyes, a huge thing. There's a lot of small stuff on any bike I ever put together, whether it's my personal bike or clients' bikes or whatever. Attention to detail is key. Everything has to lay right. Lines have to lay right. Wiring has to be right. You know, there's you know that's kind of where I like to, again, it harkens back to the chopper stuff. You know, where just the smallest minute details are what actually matters. You know, trying to bring that over to the bagger side of it is, again, it gets lost. You know, people don't. Half people, you know, most people don't give a shit, but those are Screaming Speed and Fab side covers. And Steve, if you see this, those are the ones that you asked me about on Bike Week. I finally painted them black and put them on my bike. The swing arm is Alloy Art swing arm, absolutely killer. And the same thing, Alloy Art has been super cool to us since we started. They've been super supportive, helped us out in any way that they could. You know, those guys are super rad. And I think, dude, I'll be honest with you, the biggest improvement on these things, you have a stock bagger and you want just the biggest improvement for the cheapest money, is Alloy Art makes their stabilizer. It's like $180, and you can put it on a stock bike and it completely changes the handling on it. Completely, 100%. Those things that's like my favorite little performance part that's cheap. It's killer. Yeah, I got the custom diamond blinkers, got the, you know, ARP bolts throughout the entire motor and most of everything else that's on it. I got Brad's valve stem covers with the bolts on them as too. You know, those are cool. I got red spark plug wires, so, you know, that adds like 3 horsepower, you know what I mean? Trying to think of what else, man. Saddleman seat, it's just a regular old step up, you know, the ubiquitous step up that everyone knows. It's a great seat, you know. That's why they're on everything. But like I said, a lot of it was a build around, I got the SNS exhaust, but those heat shields, those little carbon heat shields, those are Sawicki carbon heat shields. That's another company that has been super fucking cool to us since we started. And I work real closely with, me and Freddie worked really closely with. Sawicki is killer. I know they've gotten a bad rap before, and I know everything about Sawicki in the past, but I can say, coming up, being a Dyna bro in the early Dyna bro time period, it was definitely, you had a Thunderheader on your bike, or you tried to get your hands on a Sawicki, back in that time period. They were kind of like the first custom exhaust company, you know what I mean? They're all, especially custom stainless, specifically exhaust. There wasn't, 10, 11, 12 years ago, that did not exist. You had Thunderheaders. That's what you had. We had a Super Trap or whatever, but that's kind of it, But yeah, man, Sawicki's, like I said, Sawicki's been really cool to us. The most of it is just, a lot of it was just the styling aspect of it. Taking stock, Harley parts or stock Harley parts, and then kind of doing like the black and chrome kind of mix up and just making it look, look nice. I think it's cool. I think it's a bitchin' bike, it's a cool bike, yeah. Go and ride your bikes. Ride your bikes. Just ride them, you know what I mean? And I will say this, what I'll say about the performance scene is, and what I like so much about it, is there's a lot of dudes just riding bikes, beating the shit out of their bikes, having a great time on them. I really like that, you know what I mean? There's other scenes where there's so much not riding involved. There's more of standing with your chest poked out in a fucking parking lot, like, cool, let's go ride your bike. Let's not talk about what your bike does, let's not anything like that. Let's go put them on the road, let's go ride, let's go see what they do. That's what I like the most about the performance Harley scene. And I'm so beyond ecstatic that there is now a performance Harley scene. There's parts. There used to not be any fucking parts. You couldn't get your hands on parts. You couldn't get your hands on anything. Nobody cared about it. Nobody looked at it. It was stupid, whatever. Now that it's a scene and there's people coming onto it, like, I'm beyond psyched about it. It's so cool. And it's getting a lot of the younger dudes into it, right? Because dudes like, I'm 33 now, my age, dudes maybe a little bit older than me, probably grew up in sport bike era when sport bikes ruled the world in the early 2000s, right? And Harleys were always just old dude bikes. And now this side of it's coming into play. It's bringing a lot. I mean, in all reality, it's keeping Harley alive. It's gonna be the wave in the future for Harley Davidson. But with that being said, I don't just like performance bikes. I like Harleys in general. I like Harleys. I like old Softails. I like, like I said, chopper. I like little Sportster trackers. I like all kinds of shit. I like it all. I like Harleys in general, but this is the segment of the brand and industry that has my heart the most. Thanks for watching this. If anybody watched this at all, that is huge. If personally for me, it's also an absolute honor to have you come here to my shop and want to even talk to me about this bike. It's cool to see that people are watching this stuff. It's cool to see that people are into it, and I just want to see more and more people into it, to be honest with you. I think it's a really cool thing, and yeah, anyone that's into this, checking this shit out, it's cool, man. I think it's cool, and I just want to keep see it growing. The more the fucking merrier, man. It really is, the more the merrier. There's not, and so I think I'll say this: a lot of young guys will probably looking like you say, you're looking at Instagram or you're looking at whatever social media you're looking at. Motorcycle was Instagram, right? And so you're looking at Instagram, you're seeing all these performance bikes, and you think that the scene is like there's a lot of it. There's not a lot of us out there. There's not many of us. There's if you're looking at it all the time and you're seeing them all the time, yeah, you're gonna think that, but there's not a lot. So, go to your bike nights or go to whatever's going on. Just try to be part of the community and the scene, because that's what's gonna make it grow. That's the only thing that can really make it grow. So the best way to get in touch with me or anything Spacecoast, Instagram is generally gonna be the best way. Or you can show up. I'm probably out in the showroom, or I might be back here. Like I said, the main thing I focus on a lot of dyno tuning, and just the engine stuff is a big focus. It's kind of the bread and butter of the thing. But we can do whatever you want back here for us. Then the main thing is definitely performance-oriented Harley Davidson motorcycles. Old, new, everything in between. That's kind of what we really focus on, what I like to focus on, and what I like to do. I really like dyno tuning. Dyno tuning is a blast to me. I've been doing it for a long time. It's fun. I like testing new parts and seeing what they're going to do on the dyno, and then put them in real world applications, see what they do in that side of it as well. But yeah, Spacecoast Speedworks on Instagram. We got a website too, but I think Instagram is the best way to really do it. Or you email me, Wade at spacecoastharley.com. But those two are the best way.